Okay, so today we are going to learn about adding and subtracting fractions, and we're going to continue on with that idea of using the least common denominator in order to make things a little bit easier through this process. So we're going to pull on what we learned yesterday and practiced yesterday and apply it to today. So what I want you guys to do is open up your notebooks to the next available page, and I want you to title that page Adding and Subtracting Fractions that I have up on the screen. So go ahead and title that page, add it to your table of contents, and then pause the video so everyone can do that and restart the video when everybody's ready. The one thing I want you guys to remember as we're doing this today is that you need a common denominator when you're adding and subtracting fractions. So I want you to right underneath the title that you just titled this page to write this. You need a common denominator to add and subtract fractions. That's the biggest thing you guys are going to remember or need to remember in order to do these correctly. So write this down. You need a common denominator to add and subtract fractions. Now what we're going to do is we're going to continue on and we're going to just begin practicing. So we are going to start by just adding some fractions. So I want you guys to write this original problem down. 2/3 plus 3/4. Go ahead and write that original problem down. 2/3 plus 3/4. Now what we need to do is find a common denominator. Right now 3 and 4, they're not the same number. So we need to think about a common denominator. It's most helpful when you have the least common denominator. But here, a common multiple of both 3 and 4 is 12, and that happens to be the least common multiple, which we would use as the least common denominator. So in order to get from 3 to 12, we multiply by 4. So we have to do the same thing to the numerator. 4 times 2 gives us 8. And then to get from 4 to 12, we multiplied by 3. So again, we do the same thing to the numerator, and 3 times 3 is 9. So now we're able to add just our numerators together, 8 plus 9. So when we do that, we get 17/12. Now, hopefully we all notice that this is an improper fraction, and we can't leave our fractions improper, so we need to change that to a mixed number. So we have to see how many times does 12 go into 17. Here it's 1 full time, and we have 5 left over. So our answer is 1 5/12. So our next example, it's just another addition problem, and this one is 6/7 plus 1/2. So our first step is to find that common denominator. We need to rewrite these fractions with a common denominator so we can add our numerators together. So what I want you to do is pause this video, have students try this on their own. They can compare with their shoulder partner if they think they've gotten it correct. And then once everyone feels comfortable or if they get to a point where they're stuck and can't get past, go ahead and start the video and they can check their work. So when I look at 7 and 2, my first thought is a common multiple of both of them would be 14. And that also happens to be the least common denominator. So then I look back at 7. To get from 7 to 14, I multiply by 2. So I do the same thing to my numerator. 2 multiplied by 6 is 12. I get from 2 to 14 by multiplying by 7. Same thing on my numerator. So 1 times 7 is 7. Now I can look at just my numerators because my denominator stays the same. I'm going to add those two together. 12 plus 7 is 19 over 14. And again, this is an improper fraction. So we need to see how many times can 14 go into 19. And that's 1 full time. And we have 5 left over. So it's 1 5/14 is our final answer. So hopefully you guys were able to get that either on your own or with the help from your shoulder partner. And our last example for addition has some mixed numbers. So we're not just dealing with fractions here, we're also going to be dealing with mixed numbers. So with addition, we're able to just ignore our whole numbers and just deal with these fractions here. So again, we need to find that common denominator. If the least common denominator isn't very clear, we could always do a really quick ladder method, which doesn't really take too long. So a common factor of both 6 and 9 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then only 1 can go into both of those. We multiply our outside numbers. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. So we would rewrite these with the denominator of 18. Now, when we look back at our original problems, we get from 6 to 18 by multiplying by 3. So we do the same thing to our numerator. 9, we multiply by 2. Do the same thing to our numerator. 4 times 2 is 8. And now here, we're going to add our whole numbers together. So 2 plus 3 gives us 5. Then, we're going to look at our numerators, our 3 and our 8. And that gives us 11. And our denominator stays the same. So before we're done, we have to make sure that we can't simplify. And 11/18 can't be simplified. So we are finished. 5 and 11/18 is our answer there. So now that we've done a couple addition problems, I want to go ahead into subtraction problems. So our first example I want you guys to write down is 7/10 minus 5/12. And again, remember that idea that we have to have a common denominator. So we have to find a common multiple of 10 and 12, or the least common multiple would be the best, so then we wouldn't have to simplify at the very end. So again, if we weren't sure, we could set up a quick ladder method and quickly find our least common multiple, which we'd use as then the least common denominator. And when we multiply 2 times 5, which is 10, 10 times 6 is 60. So we know that we can write 60 as our least common denominator. Multiply 10 by 6. So we're going to do the same thing to 7 and get 42. 12 times 5 is 60, so 5 times 5 is going to be our new numerator there, which is 25. Now we can focus on just our numerators, 42 minus 25. So we're going to take 42, subtract 25 from there, and get 17. So it would be 17/60. We have to make sure that we can't simplify, and 17 and 60 don't have any common factors besides 1. So we would be done there. 17/60. So it's basically the same idea as addition, except once we get our common denominator, we're then subtracting our numerators. So we're going to go ahead and put a second example up here. 5/6 minus 4/5. And I want you to pause the video here and have students try this on their own. And again, they can check with their shoulder partner or ask their shoulder partner a question if they need help. But to get you guys started, go ahead and try and find that common denominator. Don't forget to change your numerators and then subtract. So go ahead, pause this video, give students a couple minutes to work, and then go ahead and restart the video so they can check their answers. So here I used the common denominator of 30. So I'm going to rewrite my fractions with that common denominator of 30. And I look at my first fraction, 6 times 5 gave me 30. So I'm going to do the same thing to my numerator. So this will be 25/30. Multiplied 5 by 6. So I'm going to multiply 4 by 6 and get 24. And when I look at my numerators, 25 minus 24, I get just 1 left over, so I have 1/30, and that can definitely not be simplified. So our answer would be 1/30. Our last subtraction problem is going to have a mixed number in here. Now, with addition, we were lucky, and we get to ignore our whole numbers until the very end when we're actually doing our addition. Subtraction is a bit different. We need to make sure that we use that whole number while we are subtracting. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. And by doing that, we're using the big C method. Hopefully we all remember that. You multiply your denominator by your whole number and then add it to your numerator. So we would do 6 times 1, which is 6, plus 5, which is 11. So we'd write this as 11/6 minus 3/4. So 1 and 5/6 is the same as 11/6. Now, once we get to that point, we still need to find that common denominator, 6 and 4. So here I'm going to use 12. A lot of people may instantly think of 24, and that would be fine. That's not the least common denominator, but it is a common denominator. And if you use 24, then at the very end you'd have to do some more simplifying, which is not a big deal as long as you simplify correctly. So to get from 6 to 12, I multiplied by 2. So I do the same thing to my numerator, and I get 22 over 12. 4, I multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply my numerator by 3 and get 9. So again, now I get to look at my numerators. 22 minus 9, and I get 13. So then I would have the answer of 13/12, which is improper. So 12 goes into 13 one full time. We're left with 1 left over, and we keep our denominator. So our answer would be 1 1/12. So with subtraction, make sure you start, if you have any mixed numbers like we did here, this 1 5/6, make sure you change that into an improper fraction first. We don't want to leave those alone. So we change to improper fractions, we find a common denominator like we do with both addition and subtraction, and then we either add or subtract our numerators, simplify if necessary. So go ahead and end this video now, and you have some time to work on your homework. Make sure you use your notes if you need them. Feel free to take that notebook home, as long as you remember to bring it to class tomorrow.